June, thank you for the introduction. Good morning, everybody. I have a lot of slides, so I propose we will start right away. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Here we go. So the first part will be mainly related to something that I've been working on for almost 26 years now, since I wrote the first text, which is a fundamental worry about what is happening to the planet and what today I would call the misunderstanding of the century. Because what we are living through as a species or as a complete ecosystem today, everybody calls the problem climate change. And I'm very convinced that that name is totally wrong. It's a bit like saying that somebody who has a very heavy disease like leukemia or cancer, that he or she has fever. So climate change is real, very dangerous, but it's only a symptom. It's a proof of the fact that the planet as a total system is ill. Okay. So what we see here, the planet has a code. Its surface has 3 layers: water, land, and air. And we are killing those 3 layers. We took 80% of the weight or of the mass of the fish out of the waters, and we replaced them with huge amount of plastic. The land, we possess close to 80% of the fertile land fraction, so nature is almost gone in its fauna and flora. And indeed, the air is full with greenhouse gases. That's why I would recommend you all to read this. It's easy to find online. It's an article by Richard Heinberg, written or published by the Post-Carbon Institute in 2017, with a very clear title: Climate Change. He acknowledges it's a problem, but he says it's not our biggest environmental problem. And we will need technology, but it will not be enough to save us. And this article in the global comment section I'm looking for the name of the author, Kevin Casey, is even more clear, and it's a bit longer, but it's worth to read it. Climate change became almost irrelevant because the things that are going to pieces would anyway go to pieces if the only thing we do is correct our carbon emissions. And the deeper causes are the fact that already in the 1970s, the Club of Rome said that there should be limits to economical growth and to population growth, and mankind did not listen. And he also states that the awareness about sustainability issues is only now in fashionable, and that's at least 40 years too late. A proof of what I would call this emission blindness, that mankind is now only looking at carbon emissions and warming, is something crazy that happened in Germany. Some people think that we will save the planet by using electric cars, which is not the case, but okay. So Tesla is starting to build their first factory in Europe, in Germany, and they won a lawsuit, and they are cutting down 92 hectares of forest, which is totally irresponsible behavior of mankind, because nature is more urgent and more important than emissions, and they are not aware of this.
Okay.
And some people think that biomass might be a renewable source of energy, which is also not true. To understand this, you first have to know, why is there too much carbon in the atmosphere? The cause is very simple. The total amount that the planet or that mankind is emitting every year is a lot bigger than the amount of carbon that can be absorbed by our oceans and by our forests. So how could you then pretend that if you process a tree into pellets to burn them in an energy factory that uses biomass, that emitted supplementary amount of carbon could come back as a tree, if everything else that you are emitting before already is bigger than what can be recycled and absorbed again? So biomass is not renewable, and there are different reasons. First of all, The emissions are more than the absorption capacity. Second, there is a problem in time. Every time you burn a tree, you have to wait 30 years before it grows back. And there is a problem in space, and that's the last one before translation. If you would need, like in Europe, half of the fuel of cars in biomass, you will need already all the fertile land of the continent of Europe. So you wouldn't have food anymore and still missing half of your fuel. The second problem, or the third one already, we are suffering from what you could call cognitive dissonance. We pick up messages very badly if they question our own behavior as a species. We behave a bit like the king of the planet. Because the first time somebody wrote a scientific text about how and why things are going wrong, that was Eugène Husard in France. The text was called L'Arbre de la Science, the Tree of Science, and I translated it here. He said that in 100 or 200 years, all over the planet, the combination of deforestation and the emissions of carbonic acid and carbon oxide would destabilize the harmony of the planet. That is a scientific text that is already 160 years old, more than 160 years old. And the second time somebody wrote something important about it, it was the Scandinavian professor Svante Arrhenius, who was a professor in physics and chemistry. And he wrote that the average temperature of the planet would go up if mankind emits too many heat-absorbing gases in the atmosphere. That professor won in 1903 the Nobel Prize. So it's not a kind of second-class scientists. It's a very, very eminent and very competent scientist who said this more than 120 years ago. This is less important, but in Brussels today, we have already a difference of almost 3 degrees since the beginning of the atmospherical and climate observations that started in 1830. In urban environment, because of the thermal mass of concrete and stone, warming effects are a lot more visible. But as I said in the beginning, climate is not the worst aspect of the problems of the planet. And here you have the famous Rockström diagram, a scientist who kind of made a chart, a map of where the boundaries are of what our planet can stand of suffering. And there you see that the worst one is on the left here, the biodiversity loss, the loss of life. The second one is the nitrogen cycle, which is everything that is emitted by agriculture. Mainly fertilizer, and the global warming is only the third one in sequence of urgency. So what we forget as a species is whatever we do, we cause intense land use somewhere else. This is an interesting example. If you are eating oranges or lemons or lime, citrus, fruit, you don't know that in Spain, this is 450 square kilometers of greenhouses, of plastic and glass boxes in which they grow oranges. The only thing you see on TV or in the cinema is a commercial movie for orange juice, which is probably shot in the beautiful orchard garden of an historical abbey, where a young couple is dancing through the trees of oranges and is taking an apple from the tree, or an orange from the tree. So our image of what we are doing to the planet is always embellished, and we are not in touch of what we are causing. And it is even worse if we look at red meat. Today, in agricultural surfaces on the planet, there is 2 times more, so 66% of the land is used to make food for cattle. And cattle itself also needs land, so red beefsteak uses 5 times more land surface per kilocalorie of nutritional value compared to vegetable food, and needs 20 times more water. And here you see a livestock beefsteak farm in Brazil. Those cows are not happy dancing in the field of a green meadow grassland. They are in some sandbox eating steroids and hormonal prep stuff to make their muscles grow faster. And then this is what you see is what mankind has been doing with emissions or with energy use. And then you see that from the half of the 20th century, you have a steep exponential growth. And since COVID, we all understand the word exponential growth. This is the old wood fires that were used in traditional rural communities. Then we started to do mining with coal, then came oil, then came gas, hydroelectric power, solar, biofuels, a little bit of nuclear here, the red one. But the total amount of what we are emitting and using is exploding and is still going steep up. It should go down, and we don't. So even if we think that climate is the biggest problem, which is not the case, even on that level, we are not performing as we should. The same with fertilizers in agricultural land. The use is still going up in a very scary way. The consequence of our excessive use of land has caused nature to almost disappear. It's very difficult to find a piece of land, fertile, good land, that has not been altered by mankind. And that means that the most sensitive part of the fauna on the planet are the large vertebrates, that they are almost eradicated. You can clearly see this in the calculations of what they call the vertebrate biomass. If we put all the life forms on the land that have a skeleton on a balance to measure their weight, you would measure what they call the global vertebrate biomass. 65% of that weight is our cattle, domestic animals, cows, pigs, sheep, goats, all these things, chickens. 32% of that weight are humans. And the weight of all the vertebrate animals in the wild, all the lions and the elephants and the eagles and the leopards of this planet, is only 3%. And that came, maybe, let's first translate this. And that is not because of global warming, because that has just started. The problem started 10,000 years ago when mankind stopped roaming, hunting, and gathering food, and we started to build. And that's where our profession comes in. We started to build villages, cities, and we started to do sedentary agriculture. And that's when we started killing nature. So here you can see what happened in those 10,000 years. This green is the vertebrate biomass in nature. 10,000 years ago, it was 330 million tons of carbon. It went down in the beginning of the 20th century to this amount. The blue is our cattle, the red is we. And today, vertebrate biomass is about 20 million tons. So more than 90% is dead, gone. This is our cattle and this is us. So don't say this is global warming. This is mass extinction caused by us. Let's take one example, the species of the African lion. Here you see the map, how from the light brown color to the orange color, its territory was shrinked. So those animals don't die because of global warming. They don't have the space to live anymore. And if you look at their numbers, this starts at the beginning of the 19th century, but 2,500 years ago, we still had 3 million lions. In the beginning of the 19th century, we had a bit more than 1 million. Today, we have only 20,000 lions, which is almost the amount where their DNA starts to weaken because their genetic diversity is getting too small and they become sensitive and weak and they lose resistance against pandemics. Unfortunately, the most severe descent in biodiversity happened in the last 50 years. This is the average biodiversity loss on the planet on a global scale. And there you see that we lost almost 70% of all the life forms in the last 50 years. Well, this is an example of what the European colonization of the United States did, where only Indians and millions of bisons lived. I think they killed all the bisons except for like 10 or 20 that were saved. And now in Yellowstone National Park, they succeeded in bringing the species back in a modest way. But this is a very clear proof, this photo, that the biggest eradication of life forms on the planet happened in the last 150 years and has nothing to do with climate change and everything with a lack of human modesty. And then we should also admit that we are a problem, a big problem. And this is the birth rate in percentage. And this is the date that the contraception pill was invented in 1960. Luckily. So our birth rate started to go down, and the total number of people on the planet you see here finally starts to top off and should go down as fast as possible, because we really are too many. If we all live like United States citizens who have the biggest carbon and natural footprint of all the countries, there is only room for 1 billion people on the planet. If we would live like Europeans today, maximum would be 2 billion. If we would live like the standard of life of Europeans today, and we don't emit carbon, and we eat very small amounts of red meat, then we could stand 3 billion people on the planet. The reason is simple. It's not about calculating how many people the planet can feed, because then we need all the land for agriculture and soon we will all be dead. The real good question is, and the correct one, how many people can there be if we want every species of plant, animal, and human to be flourishing and happy? So that's why my son came back from school 10 years ago when he was 15 years old with this photo, and he said, in class we just were learned that, as a joke, that smoking is good for the environment and for nature because it kills human beings. This is just a wake-up call to, and a bit of relativism. The causes of death, and you see here a very interesting one is road injuries here, 1.24 million. That's car accidents per year on the planet. And this is terrorism, 26,000. And we are a lot more scared of terrorism than of our own car. So this is just a chart to tell you that I am in love with statistics, because we are not rational beings. We need these numbers to know what is really important. The same goes for our energy. Many people are afraid of nuclear energy, but here you see the total amount of victims per terawatt hour of energy produced. And then you see coal, brown coal, oil, biomass, and gas are a lot more dangerous than solar, hydropower, wind, and nuclear. What are the main causes of extinction of biodiversity in sequence of importance in the different continents? You see that color is the biggest one, which is changes in land use caused by agriculture, and second by, you could say, our profession, because every time that mankind destroyed a piece of nature, the master plan, the urban design plan, and the plans for all the buildings were designed by our profession of urbanists and architects. Only the second one is overexploitation of species. The third one is invasive species, and then all the rest are minor effects. Climate change is the smallest one. In all the continents is between 4, 5, sometimes a bit more, not even visible in some, 12% in Latin America, but in most it's 4, 5%. So the biggest one is land use, and that's the main link from this biodiversity story to our profession. To phrase it in a different way, easier to remember, is architects are the teeth with which mankind eats nature. Here you see how much land we did not touch yet. That's the green. And unfortunately, lots of the green spots are deserts. Central Australian desert, the Sahara desert, the Mongolian dry high plains of the steppe, ice in Greenland, ice in North American continent, Siberian dry plains and permafrost. So we only have a little bit of forest here in Central Africa left, and 1/3 of the original Amazonian forest, and that's it, and some Canadian forests. This chart shows that this is almost game over, and that we urgently, and scientific calculations have stated that we have to give half of the planet and half of the water ecosystems back to nature. We have to leave them completely. We can only come back to make movies for National Geographic as a kind of respectful visitor. So that's why I'm going to jump now to architecture, because of course the biggest causes are economical growth and demographical growth, and architecture is part of an economical sector, of course, and low-income countries are also a problem because birth rates are only high in countries where respect for women's rights is low, where education levels are low and healthcare levels are low. So we should reinvent a global economy that doesn't grow anymore and that doesn't need low-income countries to make sure that our expensive smartphones are not 3 times more expensive. That's why I'm going to show a few projects. Given this environmental concern, as a government architect, I try to undo urban sprawl, to try to forbid as maximum as possible freestanding detached housing in the middle of nowhere in suburbia, and to focus again on densifying and reusing. And also in our office, we refuse already almost 15 years to build detached houses, and we refuse to build on greenfields. So this is an example of a co-housing competition we won in the city of Ghent, where we were asked to design new housing, high-density co-housing, within the perimeter of a very old empty factory where the roofs were gone. We only had walls and some metal structures in the air. And we built a number of apartments there for like 60 families in a very beautiful rewilded garden. And these are the render images. And this is on the left, the render, and on the right, we are now in this stage, the construction will be ending in a few months, and the families will be housing in, and the plantations will be, the landscaping will be done. Then I'll go to another one. This is a former factory of alcohol, a distillery, a brownfield, polluted, that was bought by a very artistic art collector and developer who asked 3 offices to work together to develop this in a new compact housing project, and a very interesting target group. This time it is not for middle class, but for the rich. So who normally buy their own condo villa in nature, and we were challenged to make something attractive. We recycled silos. That was done by another office. Another office here topped up these old warehouses, and our office built here those cubes on top of the new parking garage and the workshops for the art collector. And these are the renders of the project. Here you see the roof with 1 meter of lightweight lava substrate, the roof of the parking deck. Now I will go through a number of slides, first the renders and then the reality. But because it's getting late and I want to show you many projects, I will let just the slides speak for themselves, so watch them carefully. Thank you. So here you see the renders of those gardens between the apartment blocks that we made. We also designed special apartments. They are all different. They all have 2 levels, 3 facades, and they all have special windows. And the living opens with a big window to have a sense of terrace inside. And now we go to the reality. Here you see the construction, and you see here the 80 centimeters thick layer of lightweight lava substrate, in which it was thick enough to plant adult trees of 6 and 7 meters high. So from one day to the other, there was a real garden there. Here you see the plantation just after it was done, and then afterwards you will see some images 1 year later. And this is a render of those big openable windows. Then through some gardens.
가든들입니다.
We see here the reality of a living room with a big openable window, and how the windows become almost like paintings on the wall. And how when you open the window, you are letting the garden almost enter in your house. Even the underground parking under these gardens was designed almost like a church. I will show a small project now where we were asked to make an alternative. So the original design was this, like 120 small villas on 6 hectares of wetland. But the town asked us, look at it differently, because that wetland is potentially a natural reserve. Can't you find a scenario to densify? So we came up with the idea of a pier in the sea, on the coastline. And on each pier we had terraced row houses, and at the end a tower with apartments. So with 4 piers we managed to build not 120 small villas, but 185 houses and apartments on only 2 hectares. And we have in between 4 hectares of not accessible wetland, protected natural area, with only elevated wooden paths that connect all the playgrounds that are around the tower each time. The gardening will be done with plantations in the beginning and then zero maintenance that nature can take over and start to do rewilding. And this is a render to show what can, in the winter, it is too wet, but in the summer, some of the maintenance for some open spots will be done by sheep, who will be brought there by a farmer. So for the rest, the authorities have no maintenance job there. And this is a street on one of those piers pointing towards that tower at the end. Now I will show a tower, an existing office tower that was empty for 20, 30 years. It was built in the 50s. And we were asked to transform it into housing. And these are the renders. We added terraces on both sides of the facades. We added also 2 levels on top. I will show you some more renders of the entrance here. Lower levels are services, offices, commercial, employment, and so on, because there was no privacy on the ground floor to insert housing. And this is the reality. This is not a render. So here you see the finished project. It is completely occupied now. It is 156 apartments. It was finished 2 years ago.
2 years ago, okay.
The panels on the facade are solar shading panels that can move. They are sliding, so the facades are changing all the time. So on the courtyard, there is also a small building with student housing and studios. Yeah. This is the entrance hall. We also made it generous and big. This is a view from one in the apartment, and this is the view of the sliding solar screens. And here you see the ground floor plan with, on the right down here, the student housing and the studios, and here the tower with the entrance hall and the offices. And now I will quickly scroll through all the levels where you see that we go from small apartments in the tower on the lower levels to bigger apartments up. Just to show that the most ecological building is the one you don't build, and the second most ecological building is the one you can recycle and turn into something new. I will show another one, which is a very difficult one, which was also an old, but that's already like 10 years old, a bit more even, almost 15, but it's a beautiful one. It's an old maltery where they were drying malt to make beer and whiskey. And it was very, very derelict. It was very old and in bad condition. And many developers had proposed to demolish it because they thought it was not possible to recuperate it. But then the new project, the neighborhood was almost against, always against, and they won the lawsuits and they blocked new projects. And then they asked us to come up with an alternative to maybe save a bit more of the heritage there. So it was very compact. It was inside a housing block. So here we had a blind wall against the back gardens of small houses. And here in the lofts, we in the drying tower, we made a loft, big apartments, and here we made six urban villas. So this courtyard, the old one, is this one, and in the back where the villas are, it's this one. And here you see the plans of the ground floor. Yeah, and then here we have the 5 houses in the first row with the blind wall. This is taken, the view is from the neighbor. They have light from the roof that filters through these staircases down to from the second to the first and to the level to the ground floor. It's a kind of open staircase as a shower of light. But the walls were so rotten that we had to make almost like a microsurgery plan to recuperate and restore all the brickwork. And this is the result. In the loft in the middle, the building, the floors were only 1.8 meter high because it was only used to dry malt. And the building had no foundation, so it was very, very bad condition. This is, I will add it and you can translate everything. This is a drawing made by the daughter of the contractor who said, Dad, this building is so dangerous and in bad condition, you have to demolish it. Also there we did this microsurgery. How can we first fill in all the facade with new bricks and then cut new windows on a different level and put new floors inside? So here you see we are filling all the windows and we even kept everything that was kind of in bad condition, even how the foundations moved, because the building had almost no foundations. It was built in the mud.
진흙 위에 지어가지고 어떤 거는 지금 슬라브가 처지고 지금 컨디션이 저런데 is it okay structurally?
We had to put new foundations under the existing building. It was very complex.
아하. 그러니까 새로 기초를 전부 다 새로 넣어야 되고.
Here you see, here we are putting the new foundation and we are filling in the windows and we start to cut new windows.
This is crazy work. 네. 그러니까 전 밑에 기초 새로 슬라브 다 잡아 넣어가지고 공구리로 전부 다 기초 새로 만들고 그 다음에 새로 창을 다 만드는데 why didn't you keep all those tilted openings as they are?
Because we can't. This is too low. This is 1.8 meters useful height. You can't use them.
Right. So actually, you demolished
very
the
important.
floors. Oh.
What we did, the new brickwork is 2 centimeters deeper. So we kept it. We kept the old pattern visible in the topography of the facade.
Oh my God, that's a palimpsest of the.
Yes, it's a superposition.
Superposition, yes.
And then we made the underground parking garage with a tunnel under the old maltery, next to a river.
Amazing. Yeah.
지하
Here you see the
주차장.
result. Here you can see the deeper brickwork of the old windows.
Right.
And the new windows were cut, but then we had to kind of finish the cut with a black panel to finish all the ugly cut bricks.
It's beautiful.
And we put the windows very deep because then we didn't have privacy conflicts with the rear facades around of the neighbors.
Beautiful juxtaposition. 3 layers are very, very clearly, here. So that makes it very peculiar. Yeah.
Yes. And then we also had the building in the middle here was leaning 50 centimeters out of the vertical. You see it on these. This black is thick. Here it's thin. So the ground floor was a rectangle. The upper floor was a banana. Was curved in the plan. The facade that got the afternoon sun, the brickwork was in better condition. The facade on the north in Belgium, the north is where there is no sun, was in bad condition. That one we had to paint it. But also there, with putting it 2 centimeters deeper with the sunlight, you have a beautiful topography visible in the facade.
Wow.
This is about the transparency, yeah?
Yes, and here you see in those banana-shaped plan how much per level the wall is leaning. Yeah? From here 1 to there, almost
Oh,
10
wow.
centimeters. So we had to make special wooden frames around the aluminium windows to bridge the gap. Here you see it even
Wow.
more.
Wow.
I mean, working with what you have is not only ecological. The more difficulties you have to solve, the more interesting your architecture will get. And then we have the 6 villas in the back who have their own little privacy gardens.
Huh.
So this is the street. You go under an existing house. You go through the front courtyard with the houses. You go under in a tunnel under the lofts of the leaning building into the underground parking that is connected to this staircase and elevator here and to these 6 villas. And this is the view from the back in the street of the villas. And here you see that upper floors have windows to the street, the private street, and the lower have also windows there and windows to their small, long garden. But they don't have privacy conflicts with the neighbors.
Sectional difference, right?
Yes, because these 3 have a totally different section because they have glass on the south garden that behind the sandblasted glass, 3 times repeated. And the windows in those, everything is in fact based on an analysis of privacy views. And in all our projects, you will see we don't have a style, we don't design forms. I mean, we believe that if you don't have a reason to design a certain opening or window in a facade, you fall back into designing cheap wallpaper and styles and fashion. And that's not architecture anymore. It's like the wrapper that you roll around a gift box. This is the view of the master bedroom. Here you look down into the living room. There you have a window to their first level terrace. And this is a horizontal window facing their green roof. And this is the final slide of that project where you see everything together. On the right in the window, the reflection of the unilaterally oriented houses, the 2 centimeter deep palimpsest of the lofts and the villas in the back.
Wonderful. This is like a plastic surgeon. Huh?
Yes, microsurgery in a complex fabric.
Yes.
But not cosmetic. Plastic surgeons, they use fake stuff.
Right. Yes.
We don't use Botox and silicone.
Yes. You are so true. You are so true.
So guys, I'm nearing 1 hour and a half. I still have a few. You can choose if I can go on or not.
Oh my God, Leo, you became so popular. They want to see more.
Okay. Let's go to the next one then. I will use, let's say, something that is not housing. Coop. It was a bit similar. It's an old mill where they were turning grain into flour, cooking flour to make bread, to make pancakes and so on. It was also derelict, it was empty, it became a factory, and there was a competition to turn this into an incubator for startup companies and mixed with a museum. So, and this is the image of our submission in the competition. It was a monument, so we kept the 2 buildings and we demolished all the small buildings in between. And then we decided to recycle those 2 volumes almost as a very rough ruin. And the only thing we would add was transparency with metal, glass, and concrete. No new bricks, no new closed walls. And here you see the offices of the management and the evacuation stairs added to the building. So it's a bit like the 2 brick volumes. This is seen from the back, towards the canal. The 2 volumes are a bit like 2 divers, and everything we attach to them is like oxygen bottles and transparency. This is the entrance of the museum. And this is the top auditorium and restaurant level with the view on the city. And again, very heavy surgical interventions in a very rough structure. And like the central part with the corroded concrete is finished. We kept it like that. This is the finished state of the entrance hall.
This is the one we visited together, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And here you see on the outside, we had to raise the roof level was also 2 meters. This was too low. We added brickwork there. Here you see the evacuation stairs, the elevators, the staircase. Panoramic viewing platform on the roof. This one.
Oh, wow.
Evacuation stairs as if they are slightly glued attached to the wall. Here you see the offices of the management, but also an outside tribune in wood here on this roof. So there is an inside auditorium there and a panoramic roof. And here you have an outside auditorium in open air. And because the land was sloping up towards the back, we used that topography here to go around and to create here a slope to the first level where you can reach this elevator to do deliveries via the roof here, where you see this outside auditorium again. This is nice. This is like all the lines come together in one point. The detailing of this point was very complex because if you want it to be in one point when everything is finished, the beams and the floors cannot be in one point when you're doing the rough construction. Here you see that we had to raise the roof. We made a new roof because it was a listed truss, but it was ugly. So we made a new origami roof in cross-laminated timber that spans the whole building 16 meters in one time without any beam or truss. And here you see a big meeting room in one of the offices and how rough and untouched we kept the ruin of that factory. Also, all the technological and ventilation appliances are kept visible. So the atmosphere of the factory is still there. I mean, these walls are finished. We even kept all the graffiti. This is the internal auditorium, which is totally in glass. So we had to put curtains to be able to make projections and movies there. And this is on the other side of that auditorium. You have a cafe and a restaurant, also with panoramic views over the city. And this is a kind of experience center for children where they can learn about grasslands, about water, about ecosystems. Because the building also is a kind of museum where schools, children between 6 and 16 years come to visit also. These concrete walls, this level was a water basin of 1 meter deep on top of the building because the mill needed a lot of water. So that's another one. I have more if you like. We can go to a recent project that is. It's a bit funny because it's on the grounds of the former AstraZeneca factory, is one of the medical factory that's making one of the COVID vaccines. But it was a piece of land full of asphalt, concrete, parking, and 2 big industrial boxes. They left 5 years ago to somewhere else. So this was an empty, derelict factory of medication.
Wonderful.
I'm going fast. Historical maps. We said, okay, if it was next to a forest here, and this is a big housing boulevard, we want to bring the forest back on the side. We need more nature. We have to give space back to nature. So this is the street. There is the forest in the back here with the school. And we said, okay, we will build 30% of the plot. 70% will be a bit what we did also in that other distillery. A little bit of underground parking. Most of the parkings are under the buildings, and the rest is all planted like a forest. So here you see in the old days, it was totally built. It was completely mineral, no green on the plot. And here you see what we did instead. And this is because these buildings are high and these buildings are low. We follow that in steps from medium height to low rise. Here you see it going down from A, B, C, going from this height to this height. So from high to medium to low rise is the same, but in plan. And this is the result. We are now in waiting to receive the building permit, but these are the renders of the new neighborhood that we made. Again, with not only high density housing, but also high density rewilded nature that needs a strict minimum of maintenance that can decide itself what will grow there. So our message is stop building in the forest, stop building in nature, build in the city, and create urban nature and urban forests, replace concrete by urban nature. This is what you see from the second or the third floor. You are living in a new forest and you don't kill existing natural forests. You don't use more land for mankind. You give surface back to nature, even in cities. And on the big boulevard, we have a square where there is room for shops, kindergartens, and a kind of services. I'm just the images speak for themselves. Just go through it. So you see a street, and this is gardens. Okay, I will end with material for a new lecture in 5 years, because recently we won like 4 or 5 competitions. I'm not going to explain them. It is social housing. It is a school. It is a firefighter station, and it is a center to heal and to accompany and to help drug addict people. And it is a large 160 units of social housing project. I will just go through the images because we are almost 2 hours online, but it's just like an aperitivo, a starter to let you dream of what's coming, and maybe I can show it in a few years. This is an old factory of Cinzano, which is something like martini. It's a drink, and we turn it into social housing. This is a school in Liège, in Wallonie, next to a big river. This is a new firefighter station of Brussels. With the sports hall to train the firefighters. The village on top where they sleep when they are on duty, waiting for a new alarm to sound. And this is the new center for treatment for drug addicts along the canal in Brussels. It's a competition we just won a few weeks ago. It's a very warm and very gentle building because we have to help these people to integrate them back into society. Here.
It's not
And that's
small.
the courtyard. This is the next door garage. Here you have the center again with their living rooms and next to a new park. And this is the social housing neighborhood with 150 plus apartments with a kindergarten and some shops. And we are preparing the building permit request for this one.
Is it also a competition or?
Yes, it's all competitions that you saw now.
All competition you won. Oh, wow. That's
we won
amazing.
5 of 10. We won half. We did 10 competitions in 1 year, and we won 5 of them. We were very lucky this year.
Congratulations.
Voila, I'm finished.
Oh yeah, you are done. Yeah, thank you so much. It's early in the morning there.
Yes, yes, it is. Now it's almost 11. It's okay.
Yeah, thank you so much, Leo.